Hello there, Jenna Allen here, bringing you, as usual, the tips, tricks, and tools for manifesting your best life now. We're going to talk a little bit more about meditation, mindfulness in particular today. When we are learning how to be mindfulness, one technique or tool to use for that is categorizing your thoughts. I learned this in my yoga teacher training first and kind of incorporated it with some of the concepts taught in mindfulness as well, and I teach this to all of my clients, so it's very useful. It really helps to begin meditation with focusing on the breath first and learning how to categorize your thoughts. It gives your mind something to do rather than simply just trying to completely clear the mind, which is never super easy in the beginning. So this kind of eases us into meditation, and this is what I like about mindfulness too, is that it's not just a complete clearing of the mind. I think that a lot of people avoid meditation because that's really difficult to do, and I like this exercise, specifically categorizing thoughts. So in yoga, I learned that we categorize our thoughts into 5 categories. There's correct knowledge, incorrect knowledge, fantasy or imagination. There's sleep or daydreaming, and then there's memory. So when you are in a place of correct knowledge, it's something that you just know is fact, and that's what you're thinking about right now. Incorrect knowledge is assumptions. It could be assumptions about the future or what other people are thinking, or different things like that. We don't know that that's correct, and so that could probably maybe even fall under fantasy too. But I think a fantasy is more fantasizing about something that's not real or maybe even not possible. Sleep or daydream, those are obvious. That's an obvious category. Sometimes when we're meditating, we start focusing in on the breath and doing that mindful breathing, and then next thing we know, we're falling asleep, or we're nodding off, or we're in a daydream, and that's okay too. We just need to recognize and categorize that that's a daydream and move on and go back to the breath. And then memory. Obviously, you could just simply remember something in meditation and label it as a memory, and then continue back on with the breath. And that's how we use categorization of thoughts in mindfulness meditation, by just simply labeling the thought that comes in and then refocusing on the breath. And actually, you might do this 1,000,000 times in 5 minutes, because that's how busy the mind is. And even though I've been doing this almost every day for an entire year, meditating like this, I still have tons and tons of thoughts that come in during my meditation. And sometimes I like to use this categorizing of thoughts to help me with that if my mind is super busy. And it actually strengthens your mindfulness to continue to refocus back on the breath. So each time you have to refocus, sometimes judgment comes in and says, oh no, there I am again. It's bad that I'm thinking again. But really, we need to recognize that, hey, I'm judging myself. That's a judgment. I can categorize that as a judgment, and then I can move on, and I can go right back to the breath. So those are the yoga categories of breathing, of thoughts. And mindfulness has some other interesting things to say about hindrances to meditation that I like to use as categories of thought too. So one of the hindrances that mindfulness teaches is desire. Desire can lead to greed when we grasp or cling to things that we want to have or create, and may be harmful or inappropriate or not useful at the time that we're meditating. It's a healthy desire to want to eat, right? But during meditation, it's not useful to us. The desire of a cigarette is something that could be harmful for us. So desire is one category. I usually put it in the same category as aversion. I kind of think of desire and aversion as one category when I am categorizing my thoughts. So aversion is not wanting something. It's the opposite of desire, and it's pushing something away. We could even, take that to the extreme and be wishing ill will upon someone or something that's in the way of what we want. By the way, some of these notes I got are from a website. Let me see what that's called. InsightMeditationCenter.org has a nice little PDF of these hindrances to mindfulness, with a whole lot more information on it if you want to check that out. Again, that's 5 hindrances by InsightMeditationCenter.org. Okay, so back to aversion. Wishing harm is kind of an extreme of aversion. Fear and worry are an aversion to something that hasn't happened yet. So when you find yourself worrying, you can say, oh wow, that's an aversion. That's an aversion to something that maybe hasn't even happened yet, or that I don't know is true, right? My incorrect knowledge. And then you want to just bring your awareness back to the breath continuously. Aversion is a resistance to unpleasant states, and mindfulness always teaches that even unpleasant states deserve space and recognition in our life. We have to recognize how we feel unpleasant or that we have an aversion to something, and allow whatever is in our being at the time to be there. Obviously, if there are things that need to change immediately, you make the changes. You don't just stand by and watch as, someone brings harm to you, or, something harmful happens. But in mindfulness, if we have pain in the body, or if there's an annoying sound during our meditation, right? We might feel like that's unpleasant, like we don't want to focus on that. But for a moment, we can just kind of let that come into our awareness, see that we have aversion to that, and label that as such, and then go back to the breath. This way, we are allowing the space for anything that is to be, because it is already. So resisting it creates this fighting energy that is unnecessary and causes us suffering. So another aversion, hindrance, to meditation or mindfulness can be restlessness. We can experience agitation, overexcitement, the need to do, certain impulses or urges to maybe move or fidget during meditation. And so we can recognize that as restlessness and bring our focus back to the breath. We'll cover in another video impulses and urges meditation, a meditation focusing solely on that. And when we focus on that and we use that kind of meditation, it's really good for somebody who's trying to quit smoking or stop overeating, or stop obsessive or compulsive behaviors or different things like that, because we learn how to watch our urges and impulses, but not necessarily need to act on them. So you can kind of practice that in meditation, whether you have an itch or you really want to move your back, or you want to fidget or something. You can watch the impulse and see it for what it is, label it, and then bring the awareness back to the breath, not necessarily having to react or respond to that urge or impulse. Mindfulness, other categories are also, sleepiness and lethargy. If you're sleepy, not feeling, energetic, you're falling asleep, or doubt. They talk about doubting yourself, doubting in your mind. I think that probably falls under the same category in my mind as worry as well. So I just named a ton of categories, and it's not necessary to memorize or know or utilize all of those categories. I typically tell my clients to pick a few categories that really stand out for them. Pick a few categories that they like. For some, that means that number one category is past or future. And so each time I'm in meditation, I'm focusing on my breath, and then suddenly a thought comes in, I can label it as, oh, I'm thinking about the past or future, leave it there, and then I can go back to the breath. Desire aversion is a second category that I like to tell my beginners to use. Judgment, watching the mind, judging thoughts, judging people, judging things as good or bad or right or wrong, or our own self or our own thoughts, right? When we label our thoughts, oftentimes a judgment follows that, this is an aversion to something, and aversion is bad, or, something like that. So we want to watch out for those judgments. And maybe, sleepiness or daydreaming. So then noticing if you're starting to nod off, just kind of recognizing that. Also, something to combat sleepiness would be to, sit more erect, not leaning on anything, or to maybe open the eyes slightly, having the gaze lower down toward the ground, so that then you're not sitting with your eyes completely closed and maybe a little less likely to fall asleep. So really, any of those categories that I talked about, maybe pick 3 or 4 of them and start adding them into your meditation. And you don't necessarily need to do it the whole time. So let's say you've started mindfulness meditation and you've done 5 minutes and you liked that and you started to increase your time. Maybe you're doing 10, 15 minutes now. Your ultimate goal should be 20 minutes every day. Some people like to do 20 minutes twice a day. Obviously, the more you do it, the better you're going to be at it and the more positive effects it's going to have on your life. So some people will choose to categorize thoughts for just a few minutes in the beginning of the meditation. Sometimes 20 minutes of categorizing thoughts is a whole lot. Other times you might need the categorizing for that 20 minutes in order to be able to meditate for the entire 20 minutes, and that's a good tool to assist you in doing that. We're also going to have videos on attitudes of mindfulness, talking about body scan and meditation, doing loving kindness meditations, all kinds of different stuff real soon. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and let us know in the comments how mindfulness and meditation are working for you. Thanks for joining. Again, I'm Jenna Allen, bringing you the tips, tricks, and tools to manifest your best mindful life now. Take care.